It is 9:06, and it is time for the forum here with your host, Pat Sacco.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning, Pat.
How are you?
I'm good. How are
You
you?
have a jacket on.
Well, it was 50
Yes, sir.
degrees when I came in this morning.
You know, if this weather keeps up, we're going to move to Florida where it's warm.
That's right.
Get out of this
That's right.
mess. I think we got one more day, I think.
Yeah,
Then we're back
it's
up
pretty much
into
out of here, yeah.
Yeah. This is what I love about Florida. You get these dips of cold weather into the 40s. Something in Minnesota, something was like minus 47.
No, thank you.
Some crazy thing like that. Yeah, I mean, and then we're a couple of days later there, we're down on the beach where the big boy pants go away, the shorts come on, and then we're in. I have a couple of guests with me this morning from Rupert J. Smith Legal Library.
Good morning.
Wow, what's that? I have Nora Everwood.
Everlove.
Okay, all right, I can remember that. And Jim Wilder.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have, you and I are new friends, and Jim and I are old friends from a long time. We ended up in an organization that has morphed.
Yes,
It has morphed tremendous. What a great, I love that thing. What I'm talking about is COSA, Council of Social Agencies. And at a point in the meeting, it takes a village. And somebody says, I'm having a problem trying to find a bedroom set for one of my clients. All of a sudden, 15 people are contributing to that conversation. Line up, well, we've got sheets, we have pillows, we can help you with a blanket, a comforter. But all of a sudden, everything seems to happen when you're working with people together. It's a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Yes, Council of Social Agencies is certainly one of the treasures of St. Lucie County.
And it's been around for, 30 years at least?
Oh, longer than that, I
Longer than that,
believe.
yeah.
Yes.
Wow. See, that's why we do radio shows like this. We're going to find out things to tell people out there. The Rupert J. Smith, and in a it's been there, where we want to broaden that sense. This phenomenal program. Tell us about it.
Well, the Rupert J. Smith Law Library has been open since 1991. There was always a collection of books, law books, in the courthouse, but it wasn't accessible by the public until almost 30 years ago. And we are located at 221 South Indian River Drive, and we are next to the clerk's building, the clerk of court, Joe Smith, and we're attached to the courthouse. And it's the ideal location for this type of library. And we have a wonderful print collection, one of the best in the area. The best in the area. And we have zillions of computers, and we have very specifically trained librarians to assist the people who come in. And when you hear law library, you think lawyers, and we have a handful, but 89% of our traffic is from the general population.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, this is, we are very grassroots. We're very down to earth. And we probably spend an average of 20 or 30 minutes assisting each person who comes in, especially if it's their first time into the law library. There's a lot, we offer a lot of help.
We're not allowed to give legal advice. I mean, that's by statute.
Right.
While a number of our librarians are lawyers, we do not give legal advice.
Even if they're an attorney, they can't.
When they walk through the door, they become a librarian.
Okay, thank you.
But what we do is we, especially the pro se, the general public, we help guide them. We carefully question them about what the problem is, which might take a while to find out what the problem is. We question them, and then we help them and direct them to find their own solution to the problem, which might be, yes, I do need a lawyer, or help them find the proper petition to file with the court, or find their own answer through their own legal research.
I like to dig at things. Case in point, I had Brian Mast on the air through his office in Washington. He got on the phone. I interviewed him when he was running, but it wasn't because he was running as a candidate. I wanted to know during the election time, what happens when you get elected? You go to Washington. Does somebody meet you at the train station? Did they give you this little office? Is it a closet? Is there a training program? How do you feel? Were you scared? Nobody's ever asked these people this thing. And you think, oh, they go, no, I think they're scared to death.
It would stand to reason.
But we want to know the human side of that kind of thing. And the same thing with an attorney. Now, my question is, does an attorney look at this program as a competitor, or do they look at it as an enhancer? Or how does an attorney come and volunteer with you? You don't pay them, do you?
We do have a volunteer program,
Okay.
and they are not paid.
Thank you.
We actually have 3 clinics every week. They run for 2 hours, and you can schedule an appointment to speak with a lawyer, and they will help you, guide you through the system, and they will not represent you,
Right.
but they will help you determine the best course to do it yourself. And we have 4 lawyers, and one of the slots is in rotation, but we have 2 attorneys who specialize in family law, which is one of the biggest gaps, because Florida Rural Legal Services, which a wonderful organization, but most legal aids cannot give a lot of family law help. There's certain situations where they can, but if they opened that door, that's all they would do, because there's so much dissolutions and child support issues. So we have 2 attorneys who specialize in family law. We have one who's coming on who does criminal law, and we have 2 who have a general practice. And so you can get guidance. It's not the library giving it. It is people volunteering at the library to do that, which speaks to how do attorneys feel about this. Most of them realize that these are not their clients. They don't have any money. And
you can only do so much pro bono, where then you have to buy groceries.
well, yes, it's true. There's only so much pro bono you can do, but I am always impressed by how much they give, how much attorneys give in pro bono, much more than you would expect in other professions.
I talked to an attorney the other day, not about a legal issue, but we were at a luncheon meeting. And I said, well, I know your rates are comparable to the other rates. And she said, I spent 2 hours talking to a potential client the other day, 2 hours. And I said, well, there's $100. No. She said, I didn't charge you. So it was a conversation, and people say, oh, whenever a lawyer speaks, the meter starts running. Yes and no. It depends on the issue. And sometimes these are good people out there. And sometimes they'll say, look, I'm off the clock. Let's get this conversation over with, that kind of thing. I respect that.
They're very generous, very generous. So.
And I think there's a big problem, Pat, that people in general are scared of the court system.
Wow.
And they look at the court system itself as an adversary. And when they come into the Rupert J. Smith Law Library, we try to be welcoming and we try to take a little bit of that fear away from these people. And they don't have the money. They can't afford to be part of the court system. And we try and level the playing field a little bit so that they can have an equal opportunity toward representation. And that's part of our mission, to level the playing field and allow them an equal opportunity under the law. And that's a lot of what we do. And that's one of the reasons we're here today, to say, yes, come in. If you have a question, if you're unsure, you can come in. We will help at least guide you to ask the right questions and maybe make some of the right decisions. We're a great resource. We have lawyers who come in and use our resources because they can't afford to have the legal collection that we have.
That's right. And that's so it's a positive. It works both ways.
It does. It's very easy to think, well, we shouldn't be providing these materials for lawyers, but you have to remember who they're representing.
Yeah.
And we have a pro se, which means she's representing herself, woman who's coming into the library much of the time, and she has an anti-defamation case, and she's fighting a very large, very well-to-do firm from West Palm Beach. And, she's not afraid. She has used our legal clinics. She's getting some direction from a good lawyer, a fine lawyer. And slowly but surely, she's inching her way. And
that's the beauty of our system. That's the beauty of it, that you actually can go into court and represent yourself. And I know the phrase, a person who is their own attorney is a fool for an attorney. And that might be true, but if you have the information and you prepared and have been coached through the things, you can still handle it. Our system allows you to go to the court and do that.
Rightly so.
Yes, I can't afford an attorney, so therefore we're not going to do it. No, I'll represent myself.
Right. Yeah, she's regarded this process as an epiphany. Once it's resolved, she intends to go back to school and become a paralegal. Yeah, and you can tell she's very into it. I mean,
it takes time. One of my friends is from Russia. She brought her son over and her husband over at the time, and worked 4 years as a paralegal before she could get into and go to law school, which she did. I mean, it was a process that she really had to work herself through. And of course, being a paralegal for 4 years helped her greatly in going into law school.
Yes, I'm sure it would. Absolutely. Well, legal processes take a long time. And it's easy to get frustrated with it, but there's many reasons why it does take so long. Actually, my husband is sitting on a jury right now as a personal injury case, and the injury happened in 2014, and he's not allowed to tell me any specifics, but I was very curious to what the gap was and how long it took to get it to court.
Well, thankfully, after age 70, they don't ask you to sit on a jury anymore.
This will be his last time.
Yeah, my wife was on a jury too, and the same thing. She couldn't really discuss.
Right. So our process, we're not trying to speed things along. We're just trying to give people who wouldn't necessarily have access to justice, they can have their day in court, or they can resolve their own simpler problems.
Okay, let's get into those. what kinds of things would I be able to handle? If, again, I'm a layperson, I don't know anything. I come in, I start reading stuff. People are saying to me, yes, you can represent yourself. And what issues? I mean, I'm not going to take on a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
End of life issues.
Yes, that's
Many-
Thank you.
excellent.
Thank
Many
you.
End of life issues you can do yourself. Yeah, a simple will is the first thing that many people come in and want to do. And
Do you provide a simple will for them?
Yes.
Are they up? Is that up to the standards of HIPAA?
Well, it's broader.
'Cause I got to change mine.
It's
Yeah.
broader than most, but of course, we also explain that it needs to be customized to themselves. Right now, we have more than usual people coming in with probate questions, and that could be difficult because we can't practice law, but we can sign them up to speak with one of the attorneys. And as an example, we were able to help this man. His wife died. No, excuse me, his sister died, and she had an old beater car that wasn't worth more than $300. And he was told that he had to probate it and get a lawyer. And I mean, his head's spinning because he can't really just abandon the car either. I mean, that would have been a tempting thing to do. So, we helped him file and hopefully, got the title. And sometimes we never know how these work out because not everybody comes back and tells us, although a surprising number of people do. So he could move the title just to get rid of the car. So the idea of having to probate an estate over that is, yes, exactly. So that's one example. We had very recently a woman and her mother come in. It's a sad story. The daughter is a drug addict, recovering, but she's been arrested for breaking probation, and which is often the case. And so she has a small child, and she wants her mother to become the legal guardian of this child before DCF becomes involved and takes the child. And no matter how you feel about that this is a situation the daughter shouldn't have gotten herself into, we still have to remember there's a child involved here and a grandmother involved here who wants to take care of her grandchild. So some of them are heartbreaking, and we feel like we're in a hospital emergency room. People are coming in at the last moment with some very difficult situations.
So that very few people have a simple problem. There's by the way, I have to tell you about that. And by the way, there's another thing over here. All compounds.
Sometimes it can be somebody sold me a lemon, or this guy didn't have a title. He sold me this car and it's a bad title. Things like this. How do how
can I stop this guy from bugging me every time I walk down the street and comes and yells and screams in my face? How can I prevent that from happening? We know about a restraining order. They learn that.
Right.
And they can go to court for that too.
Absolutely.
But there are any number of things that we can supply. We can, people come in and might want to change the terms of their probation, or possibly
early terminate. They've met all of the requirements,
right.
And that is probably the number one reason people come in.
And the new law makes it a lot easier.
Their rights,
restoring their voting rights, restoration of rights. There are a number of things that people do visit us for. it's fascinating. It's a slice of life. I'm lucky enough by statute. I was added on. I am the pro se representative. I represent the general public. I am not a lawyer. Our board of trustees has a judge who is the head of the trustee. He's the chair. We have a county commissioner, and 2 lawyers serve on the board, and then
Very
a
good.
pro se representative, and that's me. And that was by statute. They felt somebody from the general public should be involved, and that would be me.
Well,
And it's-
certainly it's covered.
Yes, it is. Jim, also being active in COSA, has given us a much broader vision of what's available in the community. This was a while ago, but a woman arrived at the library, with her last drop of gas and an entirely empty wallet. She had sent her 8-year-old daughter to visit her father, and now the father won't give the child back. Exactly. What? And
Was there a court order originally when they separated?
Yes.
That the mother was to have custody?
The mother had custody. She took the child out of state legally, and then, but he was entitled to visitation. She sent the child down, and he is not returning the child. Exactly. I mean, it's a terrible situation, but so, and she has nothing. I mean, she hadn't eaten that day. She had, no place to go. All she knew was she had to get here and do something to get her daughter home. So because of COSA, we have a lot of literature. We realize, she's coming to us to help get her child back. But our first order of business should be to make sure she has something to eat and a place to stay.
Right.
So because of we're a part of a larger community, we're aware more of these resources, we could get on the phone and find her a place to stay and food to eat. And then she came back the next day, and we started on I won't say the hard work, because the hard work, it's hard work finding somebody a place to stay, but because of COSA, it was possible for us to assist.
Did she get her daughter back?
Yes.
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 I'm waiting now. Did she get her daughter?
Yes. I think the little girl is happily in Maryland right now.
And they probably asked the little girl also,
who
would you like to be with?
Well,
Well,
that question was asked probably long before that.
Right.
And of course, I don't know how young she was, or if that question would have been posed to her. But yes, I think when they get to be older, what they want really does matter.
And many times, more often than not, their choices are honored.
Yes, many times.
Because if you remove the adult from the situation, you go to the victim, the kid.
Sometimes the children are more adult,
are more level-headed.
Yes,
they haven't gotten into that argument yet.
Right? No,
it's a tough thing, and in this day and age, marriage is not something that's long-term much anymore. So many people are together for a number of years, and they get married. A year later, they get divorced. It changes things. But when there are children involved, and I call them, my son was a rent-a-kid. Okay. Every month I paid money and I got him. It was like renting a couch from, Rent-A-Center. He was more than a couch. But so I know the agony of the displacement of having children, but not having children, permanently. And it's a delicate, fortunately, his mother and I had a really good balance of correctness. If something happened at his house, he got grounded. As soon as he came to mine, he was grounded. Vice versa. If I had a rule that was working pretty well, she would adopt it. So we try to be as consistent as possible. Because he had nothing to do with our relationship. Right. And then kids so many times feel like, well, it was my fault. that my parents, got divorced and stuff. And children have to look very carefully about that because it's probably, I don't know, I wouldn't even guess a percentage that would be true for, because I think most children would admit, that it was their fault. And yet it isn't their fault at all, other than having been born into a situation. Now there's an argument, adding to the argument of two adults called children.
It's a difficult position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But children have to be encouraged too, that if there is something that they see that's an injustice, you don't have to be a certain age. Well, maybe you do, I guess. I don't know if a 4 or 5-year-old would walk into court and the judge would say, "Oh, you're representing yourself." But, there's no age that you have to wait until you're 16 or 21 to drink or something like that. There's no legal.
Right. We had a 17-year-old represent herself. She wanted to be emancipated, and she wanted to be emancipated so she could get married. And it was a bad situation at home, at least as she described it. It was horrible. But at any rate, she drew up her own papers. She filed them. She went before the judge, and she was given her emancipation.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
yes, she was a little powerhouse. She did very well. Yeah.
I just got a signal we're supposed to take a break at 20 after. And we've just been chatting, haven't we? So why don't we take a break, Mr. Technician Man? And we'll be right back.
WSTU, we go back to the forum. Here's your host, Pat Sacco.
Thanks, Mike. We are here with representatives of Rupert J. Smith Law Library. We have Nora and Jim.
Hi.
Nora's the one on my right. Jim is the one on her right. Sort of the chain here. We were talking about physician heal thyself. We're talking about people who can come in and learn enough to go to court to represent themselves.
Yes.
Now, that's not a procedure we want to advocate for, the whole population, but there is an opportunity to do that. I'm sure so many people don't realize that.
I think you're right. A lot of people don't realize. I think they realize they can represent themselves, but how do you get to there?
Yeah, right.
And how do you do it successfully? It can be very intimidating. The courts are very considerate of people who are trying to represent themselves. They make sure they understand the process. They're very generous with their time. But you still have to be able to produce the proper paperwork and file the correct motions. So, and we like to help with that.
And you have to be prepared to wait.
Yes, even with an attorney.
I want it done right now. Come on, let's go.
Yes, I'm not necessarily a patient person, and it's hard for me. But even with an attorney, you have to practice patience.
True.
Um,
It takes time.
It does. A lot.
And when you get a court date, it might be today at March the 7th,
7.
and we're going to have a hearing in July. Excuse me. What about next week?
We deal with a lot of people who come into us at 4:45 and they need to file some papers, and we're like, when are you supposed to see the judge? Tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
we're
right.
like, oh, geez. So I guess that pendulum swings both ways.
Right.
I wanted to tell you about, we've opened a second location, and it's in Port St. Lucie, which is where the population base is in our county. Our main library is in Fort Pierce, where the main courthouse is. But in Port St. Lucie, we have a small branch that is largely electronic. It has 90% of the same resources our large library does, but it just has it on computer. You were talking about your Kindle earlier, holding 3,000 books. Well, we have databases that literally hold millions of books. So, but it's located within a public library, and it's located with specifically the Paula Lewis Library, public library, at 2950 Southwest Rosser Boulevard. So it's just off of Gatlin, and we are a library within a library there. We're not affiliated with the public library in any way, but we still have some of our own facilities, and the public library has been very generous with allowing us to use their meeting rooms and some of the more sophisticated equipment. And they've been very generous. And we've only been open for a little over a year, and we're still looking for new business. So if you live in St. Lucie and you think Port St. Lucie, and you think you might have a need, please stop by and see us. We're only open 20 hours a week, and it's largely in the afternoons. 2 of our clinics are run from that branch. So you can come in and talk to an attorney if you need to. We also have seminars, and Florida Rural Legal Services also runs their bankruptcy clinics in the law library in Fort Pierce. So we have a lot of organized classes for our patrons. as well as one-on-one reference help.
What are some of the classes that are
Okay,
offered?
well, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Historically, we gave workshops and clinics on hurricane relief. We run those for years at a time, and as I said, bankruptcy. We did mortgage foreclosure relief, and for many, many years. We have done through Florida Rural Legal Services. They will come in and present family law courses, and they're using our facilities. So we've also taught people how to do legal research, or showing them the major resources and what can be done with them, how to use them effectively. So it varies over time, but we've always got something cooking.
Now, I'd like to add right now that if you're interested, you can look up our website. Just Google Rupert J. Smith Law Library, and it'll take you to our website, which will give you all this information. It'll show you what continuing legal law classes are going on for the lawyers that might be listening. It will give you all the information on the hours, our locations. It'll give you all sorts of good things. It'll tell you about the magazine that we have, Friendly Passages. It will give you all sorts of great information, and it's a lovely little website as well.
Very good, very good. Well, another question there. See, I like to dig at things that we normally don't ask. How did this all happen?
That's a great question.
Thank you. I was going to start in on that.
That would
too.
have been a talk for 2 minutes after 9.
Let me go first,
All right, go
because I
ahead.
love telling this story. Rupert Jason Smith was a longtime circuit court judge in Fort Pierce. But as a young man, fresh out of the Navy and fresh out of law school, he's local. He was born in Vero Beach, and became a state legislator in 1956, and he proposed a special legislation that created the St. Lucie County Law Library. And so at that point, there was money set aside for a collection, and they bought books, but it really wasn't open to anybody. And the judges used it, a handful of attorneys used it. So in 1990, I was hired as a contractor to present to a board of trustees, which only had 3 people on it, all attorneys at that point, on what it would take to open this library when we were building the new courthouse. And it was so much fun. It really, it's creating something very special. And I loved being part of that. Now, not long after that, Judge Smith suffered a terrible stroke, and he was told he would never be able to talk, he'd never be able to walk, and he'd certainly never be on the bench again. And let me assure you, he talked, he walked, and he did sit on the bench again through a lot of hard work, and such patience he had with himself. It was, he has since retired, and a few years ago he passed. But it was such an honor for me to work with this man. What an inspiration. Well, he's a great man who gave to the community, and he knew how to beat the odds. Great guy.
I saw some other thing on TV last night. There was an ad for the Moffitt Cancer Center.
Oh.
And Mr. Moffitt was interviewed. The man who started the whole program. I thought it had been there for 100 years. I mean, I didn't.
No.
It's one of the most comprehensive cancer centers in the country.
Yeah. We're
And
very
he was
lucky.
a very
we
humble
have-
elderly woman or man, just generous. You could just see that he was a nice guy kind of thing. I
Well,
thought,
he was-
wow, that's wonderful.
He was a Florida legislator too. And
Oh, Moffitt was?
yes, he
Oh, I know.
was. And
See?
another remarkable man. Remarkable. Oh.
How many, right now, what's our print collection size?
Oh gosh. I have to think about this. You have to,
97,000?
that would be about right. Yeah.
We
maybe-
are, I'm bragging right now, but we are probably the best law library in the state, county law library in the state. And we're
Mm.
probably better than most private law libraries
We're-
statewide.
Oh,
We're
wow.
right up there with big corporate law libraries. We are a real treasure for not only
Treasure
our,
for the Treasure Coast.
Yes.
Thank you. I like that.
not only for our county, but we have lawyers nationally who will send us questions, email, ask us legal questions. We have statewide, certainly frequently, we get phone calls and emails with requests for information and citing,
Okay.
asking for citations from our resources.
Good. Is this funded through state funds?
We're
It's another good question.
Yes. No. we have several revenue streams. One is our biggest is actually through traffic tickets. A piece of that exorbitant fine comes to
Good.
us.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
if you're
all right.
going to speed, do it in St. Lucie
St. Lucie County, so we get credit for the. Thank you.
Exactly. and then there is actually technically this is state funding. We receive a very tiny amount where the of criminal fines, the fines that anyone who's been through the criminal system. I think the last thing they do is pay a $65 fine, and that's split between several agencies,
Gotcha.
including us.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Gotcha.
and we get donations. We're
Good, okay.
very lucky. They don't. That's our third revenue stream, and far behind the other two, but it's still coming in.
Well,
We're- and we're grateful.
let me qualify a statement I'm about to make. When I talk about neighbor, I mean government. I'm not talking about local or state government. I'm talking about federal government. All right.
Nothing.
When Ronald Reagan made the great statement that moved me into what I do, actually financially what I do, Reagan said, don't ask your government, ask your neighbor. And if you can get support from your neighbors, you will have whatever you're doing for a lifetime. If you apply to a federal grant, the grant is seed money to start a program,
Right.
then it dries up. Like schools buy buses, and then when the grant is over, they can't afford to hire the drivers
Right. Or put gas.
or plan or by right, you're
Right.
planning. So I love the local efforts, even with the state, setting up a sin tax kind of thing. You create a sin, now here's your penalty. Here's your absolution. You pay money,
Oh,
and you
that's
get a
sin with an
portion of
I
that.
and not a Y.
Excellent. Yeah, you're right. And I think that's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because not everybody should be part of paying for this system, unless it's with state or federal or local taxes. But when something happens and somebody makes a slight error, come on. I mean, going 10 miles over the speed limit, you're going to get a ticket and you feel like you're a felon now. People are looking at you.
The
You know.
only drawback to our funding stream as a trustee, and I have a fiduciary responsibility to watch over our funds, is the fact that from month to month, we really don't know how much our income is.
Right,
So we do have a problem with long-term planning, because one month we might have an income of $20,000 and the next month we might have $12,000. So
Then you have
make
to
a
rely
long-
on long-term data, past data,
it's very
and projections.
difficult.
Because how do you?
It,
Yeah.
it's,
It's very difficult, and unfortunately, our print collection and our electronic subscriptions are extremely expensive. And with a law collection, it changes frequently because law is flexible. People tend to think that law is a very rigid thing, it's set in stone, and it's just the opposite. Law changes, it is interpreted, and unless it's well settled, a judge could change it and say, well, no, it's changed, it's reinterpreted, because
Because the regulations were written so vaguely that it gives you that leeway. It's not narrow to say, at a certain time on this, 350 feet of elevation, we
so
don't have that.
Now your law book has to be changed and amended.
Mhm.
So the law book that was published last year is now out of date,
And you need a
and
new
you
one.
have
Right.
to update it so the person coming in who's reading it has the updated version. Well, your subscription is going to be expensive. So we
Yeah,
have
right.
to take care of this. It's a very difficult process.
Are we buying more electronic things than paper things?
absolutely. There,
that's what
And
this
it's
is-
a big challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
it's cost effective. We have to. We absolutely have to do it. We would never be able to.
And making the balance, creating a good balance between a print collection and an electronic collection is a real key.
Oh, I know there was a question I was going to ask. How do I access it electronically?
Okay.
Great question.
I'm home. I want to check out the library here. How do I do that?
Right. You have to come to us. The subscriptions that we're
me.
subscribing to, we cannot feed that to the general public out. They would
Okay.
have to come in. It doesn't prevent us for, say, an attorney would call us and they need a copy of a North Carolina case. We can email that to them. But we have to be careful not to eliminate the need for everyone to, or they wouldn't sell any other books if we,
Right.
or
And you wouldn't be
Other-
necessary because they could just streamline it from them to the client, to the person calling.
It's
You
true.
don't need,
It's
you're not
true.
the middleman.
yeah,
you know?
right. And, if there is something free on the internet that somebody needs and they call us, we're more than happy to give them that information. So we have to protect materials that are copyrighted, but we're still more than happy to disseminate free information.
Good. But you're a source. You're a central source.
We're a research library.
Yeah,
We're
right.
going
And-
to research for you.
Sometimes, yes.
And again, people out there don't know that. I have this problem. I wish I knew how to take care of this. See, to me, knowledge is not power. Knowledge takes the fear away from things.
I have to say you're right.
You know?
If you could see the look on our patrons from the public who have, I hate using the phrase done battle, but who have gone into court and know they're in the process, but they know they're on the right path. It gives them a tremendous amount of confidence.
There was an expression that we talked about the other day. With great power comes great responsibility. Who said that? With great power comes great responsibility.
Sounds like something a Roosevelt would have said. Who said
I'm
it?
laughing. Ready? Spider-Man. Well, actually, it was his father.
Uncle.
Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben. Like the rice. Uncle Ben said, Mike, next time you're at the bar, you're going to win a couple of drinks on that one.
Okay, good. Good.
Everybody says, oh, maybe it was Laoti's son in 400 BC. I don't know. That just hit me. My brain is get these wacky things. But it is a responsibility. It's a great responsibility.
Absolutely.
And, the more you know about something, the less fearful it is. And you find out. People once said, the more you know, the less you know. Because your sphere of knowledge is this big. Then you start learning some things. Well, now those learning things blow up questions for this sphere now. And then the little things you learn again blow up. And so the more you dig in, the more you find you don't know until you learn that. And then you move on to that. So it's true that the more you know, the less you know. Your world just expands and expands.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
You
we
make a
fight
very
all
good point.
our lives to keep it small.
And simple.
So what is your title? Executive Director?
Oh, that's good.
I like that one. Yeah, I think
She'd like that, yes, but then she'd need a raise.
I'm the director, but I'm very happy to be called law librarian.
Library.
I'm very proud of my profession. I've done it all my life.
When you look out in the country, worker satisfiers. Okay, there've been a number of studies done, and money is number 3.
Okay.
You know what number 1 is? Recognition of a job well done.
She does
When
her
you hear
job
that,
very well.
you spend the money, but that you keep in your heart. Mike, you give us a little signal. We're just about done.
Just about.
And thank you so much. This was really interesting.
Thank you.
We
Thank you, Pat.
hope we learned a lot, and maybe
Thank
we're going to
you.
utilize the services. We'll be back again next week with another exciting show on the forum.